The people living here just want to be able to get back into their homes to start the real cleanup. Until you see it for yourself, you really can't get a grasp of the damage. They just wanted to get 2 people considered armed and dangerous off the street. Some kind of medical mistake happens to 1 in 3 patients admitted to a hospital. That's what's got to change. I don't know if you can tell, but there's actually a huge gap in the trunk as well. I am dwarfed by this debris, as you can see. It's hard to imagine any room was safe in this house. This is the closet the Frasers wanted to get to for cover. It remained relatively intact, even though it moved about 10 feet from its original spot, right over here. KIMA obtained video of last week's SWAT team shootout near Sela. The video shows Jesse Humphrey being shot to death by a few officers outside his RV. Good evening, everyone. It was last Friday we brought you the breaking news on the standoff on Rushmore Road. Now we have the video police tried to track down themselves. It arrived at our station anonymously in a small package with a handwritten note. After watching it ourselves, we knew it was our responsibility to turn it over to police. These are the final moments of Jesse Humphrey's life. He'd been in a standoff with police for more than an hour. Shots were exchanged and backup was called. Now 50 officers on the scene. It appears about 8 or 9 were closing in on him. Police threw a flash grenade into the RV. Moments later, Humphrey came out of the side door. He was wanted for stealing a cell phone and possibly a car. Humphrey ended up flat on the ground. Now watch as Humphrey's right arm seems to move forward in a throwing motion. The officers move closer. There's some verbal exchange. Now officers are feet away. Humphrey seems to flail his arms. We stop the video right before the fatal shots are fired. The video we watched shows Humphrey hit a few times. The video was dropped by a man who wouldn't give his name and only left a small package at our front desk. It had a flash drive and a short note. This is the DVR footage the police want so bad. I wanted to confirm the video was real, so I drove to the shootout location on South Rushmore Road. I spotted the house that seemed to be the likely source of the video and noticed surveillance cameras outside. Someone on the property was aware the video existed, but surprised I had it. They confirmed it was recorded there. Knowing this was police evidence, I contacted Yakima Police, the Yakima County Sheriff's Office, and Washington State Patrol. We invited officers from each department to watch the video.
He's shooting from inside.
Each agency viewed it. Captain Greg Copeland with YPD commented on what he saw.
I had seen the video. I actually didn't know that the video had existed, but it is helpful to watch the video.
This portion of video is the end of what police say had been a standoff that lasted hours. They say Humphrey fired hundreds of rounds before he ended up on the ground outside his home. Then there's the final confrontation. So what about the right arm movement?
He initially threw a stick at them, which I don't know what purpose that really served.
And those last few steps before the final shots. Humphrey was flat on his stomach. Police felt their lives were at stake. Captain Copeland says he was reaching for a gun in his pants when he was shot. Is there any chance he was trying to give himself up at that point?
I don't think so, because otherwise he would have thrown the little stick at the officers and then tried to access the pistol that he had underneath him.
Okay, so there was a pistol underneath him that was found at the scene?
There was, yes. And by the way, the rifle that he'd been using for most of the night was actually within about 3 feet of him at the same time as well.
We handed over all the video to Washington State Patrol, who is handling the investigation and will determine whether deadly force was justified. A few things I want to point out here. The coroner confirmed today Humphrey was shot between 3 and 8 times. You might also have noticed there was no sound on the recording. It came to our office that way. Finally, the discrepancy on the video regarding the time. It indicates all of this happened after 6 p.m. We know the shooting took place earlier than that. It's our belief the time wasn't reset after the switch from daylight saving to standard time and was off by an hour. KIMA reached out to the family of Jesse Humphrey today as well after we got the video. Even without watching it, they told Samina Engel they're already devastated. This is Streets Ferry Road. It goes into water starting here, then back about a quarter mile. At its worst point, the water's 5 feet deep, though that's down about 1.5 feet since Friday. All this water infiltrates about a dozen homes along this stretch.
That's my brother's trailer, and that's my house right there. Yeah.
Mitch Townsend hitches a boat ride to see the house he hasn't lived in for days. His fence line barely touches the surface. This is the street that's always been his home.
It takes a hard toe. It does, really. A hard toe. Breaks your heart, but I mean, you know, that's what you do.
Jason Lilly grew up here too. He moved away, but the family home that's still used for reunions and getaways is also underwater.
Well, it ain't much now. Yeah, we'll probably fix it back.
Joy Gaskins got back into her mobile home for the first time since Friday to recover whatever she can. Water got a foot high inside.
It was a big mess. floors are already starting to buckle and everything. We're just water sat in there. We're not sure for how long.
Highway 118 in front of the mobile home park is no longer flooded. However, it's passage your own risk at places like Piney Neck Road. Back on our makeshift ferry along Streets Ferry Road, we saw several cars submerged. One couple has stayed behind, living at home with its 2 goats. How you guys doing inside? Townsend's place is far from dry. He says he'll wait and see before deciding whether to rebuild. He'd like to see this stop.
If they don't do something about these creeks around here, it's gonna happen.
Lily says you have to expect this from time to time, living on what he calls a mud hole. He wouldn't have it any other way.
This is your roots. That's where I was raised at. I love this creek. Even though the water comes.
Now, a lot of people are in this same situation. Try 200 homes and 50 businesses in Craven County alone. Emergency Manager Stanley Kite says he will be meeting with FEMA tomorrow to begin the preliminary damage assessment process. I confirmed that with FEMA about an hour ago, though in terms of getting people actually here to see the damage for themselves, they say that's not likely until the damage actually recedes. They will be here as soon as possible. In terms of Vanceboro, they're having a town hall meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. It's a regularly scheduled meeting, though the flooding is not on the agenda. Our people who have concerns can bring that up during public comment. Amanda?
It's a portrait of how people felt about him. I'd completely forgotten about it, how it was then. People that were in shocked disbelief. And there's a sense of tenderness in how the woman in that photograph reaches out to be in his presence.
It only takes a few moments of walking and talking with Burke Uzzle to realize you're with someone who's seen history. He was on a plane flying to Washington, D.C. at the moment Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. He didn't know it until his wife told him when he landed. She handed the 29-year-old freelance photographer another plane ticket and sent him to Memphis. This exhibit features 21 images, 16 of which he never thought of printing, let alone have published. They include some very familiar faces.
His brother had been killed. Martin Luther King had been killed. Been a violent decade. Wars, riots, all the rest of it. And he seems to be bearing the tension of that.
But it's the faces we don't know that tell the story of the time.
People reaching out to touch him one last time. So it's a hard picture to look at for me.
Uzzle snapped 2 pictures on the same street at the funeral procession in Atlanta, maybe a block away from each other. They're side by side in the exhibit, but worlds apart back then.
You've got 2 races and you've got a broken, empty chair in the middle. It strikes me as being having this uncanny kind of symbolism. You had the significance of his life apparent that early on. There's a way in which you always resent the media circus, but on the other hand, how would his dream have lived had it not been for the media? It's the most important photograph for me. Obviously a very powerful moment emotionally for them. These are not people that are going to go out and try to create trouble. They're going to try to do good things. You can see that in their faces. You feel a sense of, we've got to get on with business. We've got to make it a better world to live in. And they're doing it together.